start careers. Am I right?
Right. We know exactly what you're talking about.
All right. This actually could be part of the another book that we'll be writing, the career zombie apocalypse instead of the single zombie apocalypse. If you haven't seen Barry's book yet, Barry, hold that thing up. That's not his book. That's just a piece of paper of his book cover. Pull it back towards you.
I'm sorry. It's
focus. There we go. Kind of. Yep. So the single zombie apocalypse, Barry has gone through a lot of events, experiences, trials, all around being single and what it's like in our culture, specifically just general single zombie apocalypse in any kind of culture, but we might have the angle from the culture of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or I would say the Mormon culture, because Mormon is more about the culture than the actual name of the church. So
I figured out that these problems are pretty universal.
yes.
So there are people who have, when you think of singles, you may have something that comes to mind, but it's people who have been married for a year and then they get divorced, or 10 years, or even 50 years, and they get divorced. What's going on? So, and why is that so common now? And what's happened in between that time? So this book is designed to like kind of give that bigger perspective. What's going on? It'll give some answers to maybe people that you're thinking about, or to yourself, or something like that.
I think it's really important to point out at this point why the single zombie apocalypse. Well, because families are the bedrock of society. They're the foundation of society and keeping it strong and raising healthy children. So figuring out your life as you're single is one of the most important things that you can do before you enter into a relationship, because the things that you haven't figured out will come out in your relationship. And so our culture, maybe we'll just call it the Western culture right now, has been affected so much that there are tons and tons of divorces with and without churches. It's just more, it's everywhere. And so that means families are disintegrating, and it all starts before you even get married. So that's why I think this is a great foundational book to get yourself figured out first, clean up your own house, and then start to work.
And this will give you a heads up, like if you're just getting into the dating world, maybe after being married for a long time, or just starting to realize that there's major problems in the dating world, whatever it is, this will give you a heads up. So when you see it, you're like, oh, that's what that is. I could avoid that, or wisely, navigate through and experience this relationship. But it's a lot of things that when you're aware of it, it'll make a big difference.
Okay, so then why did I bring that up? Well, because we're going to be talking a little bit more now, at least on this episode, about careers. So before you get married, or after whenever your career path really starts to develop, that can create issues within the marriage. That can create it's created issues within myself, because I have wanted a specific line of career and it hasn't worked out the way that I wanted. But then I look back and I go, I'm glad it didn't work out the way that I wanted. So there's a lot of things to that. We happen to be in a career field, or whatever you want to call it. Our paths have it's more of it's a creative field. We aren't doctors per se or lawyers or whatever, where you kind of go to a structured school for that, even though there's a lot to be said about that, and we're not going to talk about that now. But the creative careers are very difficult to navigate, especially in this climate that we're in. It's very stifling creatively when, like in our field of filmmaking, it's very difficult to navigate the studios and the influence that they have over a lot of people in our industry. Now, that has changed, and that's what's great, because we have more access to distribution than ever before, hence this podcast, or whatever you want to call this, a YouTube channel, and we don't have to depend on a studio to get it out there. Now we still have to do our own pushing to get it out there, but at least we have the opportunity to do it. We have at least a platform, and so that's the kind of the good and bad news. It's the bad news is it's difficult to navigate these things, but also we have other options that are coming out, and so maybe I don't know if you wanted to start kind of at the beginning of what we went through.
Well, I'll just mention, you'll find, as we talk about this, you'll find connections with every aspect of our lives is going to be connected. So the book that we just mentioned and the problems in here are going to be connected with our career, like similar problems. Like we'll get into the media, and I talk a lot about the media in this book. But when we talk about the other apocalypses in our lives, we're going to see some similarities, that we are living in a world where we are horribly afflicted by things that we don't know we're afflicted by. And when we're talking about these things, it may ring true to you that this world doesn't have to be like it is right now. It is difficult, but it doesn't have to be that difficult as long as we focus in the right directions. So
maybe our foundation, we were talking about that a little bit before we started recording, the getting our foundations right.
Yeah.
And what kinds of things are those for our foundation? Now, we're talking specifically about creatively right now, like creative careers.
Yeah, that can be one aspect. We can go off a long time on that. When you talk about foundation stuff, since we're going through a chaotic kind of trying to navigate careers, relationships, and stuff like that, a foundation that we always mention is the foundation of our relationship with Jesus Christ, and to hear his voice. And we have to emphasize that, because here's the common thing with dating and creative world or entrepreneurship, business world, is that you can't give advice to somebody else on how to do it the way you did it, because it's very individual. It's very the thing that we run into often is, oh, you're starting a business, let me tell you how you can be successful in that. And then you try it and it doesn't work like they did it, because there's always different elements in that. And and we could talk about creative stuff and how, if you go into graphic design, all you need to have is some talent, some practice, and a computer. And it's very lucrative because you have clients you could work with. And with what we have done creatively is that it requires a lot of talented people to help us out. And it requires expensive equipment. And it requires kind of a puzzle piece of things coming together, which will describe our situation right now, giving this podcast, is there has been a long road to try to build our life to be free enough to make some money, to get something that will get us to this point, to have all the puzzle pieces together to be able to do it. So I don't know if that triggers any thoughts about the creative entrepreneurship or not.
Yeah, so I've gone through some entrepreneur groups and I've talked to countless entrepreneurs. I'm motivated by other entrepreneurs. I love talking to other entrepreneurs. Now, some of them I don't, but some of them I do. The reason why I say that is because a true entrepreneur, not a business owner, those are two different things. So somebody that can buy a business and a brick and mortar business, and do you call them an entrepreneur? Not necessarily. They're a business owner. Or anybody can be a CEO. You literally just file some paperwork with the government, with your state, and you are a CEO. Okay. So I've learned some of this stuff over the years now, and I'm still trying to figure some of it out, a lot of it out. But the funny thing is, everybody that I've talked to that has been successful, they, maybe not everybody, so I don't want to be too, but a majority, and it's a common theme. And some of them slide it in there, but a lot of times it's, oh yeah, you got to work hard, and you just got to keep working hard, and, at the grind. And I get that. It's true, the grind. But you don't grind for the sake of grind. Okay, yeah.
You can finish your thought before I want to say.
Yep. And so the common thing that they slide in there, though, is, and also a little bit of luck. I've heard that so many times. So you got to have some luck, though. You can't control that.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Very discouraging, especially when you try it, what they say exactly, and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I must say that general principles that you can learn from other people, learn from other failures and stuff like that. So I can't say it's like other people can't give you advice. But you
have to take it with a grain of salt.
Right.
Meaning, take it in the right way. Sorry, you're going to make your other point.
Yeah. So I have my own path that I had to take where people have given me advice so many different times, and go work at McDonald's for a while and build up to a point where you can on the side do wedding videos, or so through hard experiences I have done that. Worked at Pizza Hut for a long time, but it was I don't know how long I want to go talk about that, but basically it doesn't work in this industry if you want to go into this type of thing. So it's because this is project based, I would have to do wedding videos consistently and build that clientele and go on that path. And then now I'm doing wedding videos for the rest of my life. That's a track some people take, and I got tired. I burned out. So you can work hard in a lot of different areas in your life, and then you get burned out. What's the burned out? What does that come from? Like, where's your motivation at? And that's everything. Like, you have to find the motivation first, because people at a concentration camp, or slaves, or Satan's demons, they all work hard. Everybody has this really hard work ethic in those areas too. So is it really working hard? Is it really getting up at 4 a.m. and really working hard 5 jobs? It's working. We've heard the phrase work smarter, not harder. That's, in other words, work with inspiration. And I had to do something that was completely out of the box, and I had to let me put this in a nutshell. I had to get out of rent somehow, because I couldn't buy a house. I couldn't get a loan for that with a project-based career. So what I had to do is I had to stop paying my bills. So my bank shut down, my cell phone shut down, my creditors were sending me letters, and I just saved up my cash, and literally I had a mason jar and I put it in there. And I built up every paycheck I just cashed it out and put it in because I didn't have a bank account. So, and so I saved up enough money to buy a house with cash. So what that did was it took care of my housing. And so that freed me up to do other things I wanted to do. That's how I had to think about it. It took a lot of like getting over fears. I mean, that's insane fears when you're thinking about bills and you're thinking about things just screaming in your head. Like you get another letter, you get a threatening, collections letter. It's so scary. But I knew this was going to work in theory, and it actually worked. So this is what I'm talking about when you somebody could have given me advice like, here's how you can do that. But I did it completely outside of the box, and it worked. And now I'm able to pay all my bills and catch up and like get ahead financially and stuff that way. But I say all that because we live in a world that doesn't have to be like this. And I thought that very idea. I thought it doesn't have to be like this. Why are housing so expensive? Why is this? And I figured out, okay, there's a lot of red tape here. There's a lot of red tape here. There's a lot of red tape here, 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 here. Every idea I had, there's red tape. And so I'm like, this could be tied in together with what anybody else has tried to do with a business, with like a startup business, like I had a concession stand I wanted to do. Made a video about that on my YouTube channel, and I said, here's the startup thing I wanted to do. It was perfect. I had all these ideas. Red tape, red tape, red tape, red tape. I'm like, what's with all the red tape? So then I'm thinking, we're living in this environment just with red tape everywhere, and there are solutions that you don't have to stop paying your bills and do what I did. But it was like Joe did it a different way. My other friend, he did it a different way. So I couldn't say, hey, Joe, just do what I did. It's you have to do it in your own way, and you've been blessed as you've done it. Mm. So
and with the whole, okay, so what I wanted to say with that was there is for creative, especially if you're a creative person, or actually I'll take it back. If you're a person that you're not doing what you want to be doing, and I'm not talking about, possibly don't dismiss the thoughts of, well, I want to be snowboarding 24/7. All right, well, what if you become some kind of, you're not in the right field, and you'll get into the snowboarding field of, okay, so this was one piece of advice that I start to give people now is, when they say, hey, well, I want to get into video, or I want to get into film or whatever, and I ask, what areas of it? Well, I just want to do it all, and so I'm going to start doing wedding videos. Well, what other things are you interested in? Because what is deep down inside of you, that's because filmmaking is a tool. Mm-hmm. It is not the thing. Like, I just want to be a filmmaker. Why? What is deeper than that? Because what I've had, this has taken 20 years or more to figure out. I didn't know. I just thought, well, I'm interested in these things. But then Barry and I, as we've talked, we figured out, it's not about the filmmaking. It's, yes, that is a tool, and we've been working on those skills for a long time. But ultimately, we want to give other people experiences. That's it. Because the tool of, say if there wasn't any filmmaking tools, so a camera, any of this recording equipment, what would we be passionate about without that equipment, period? Like if it didn't exist, there was no technology. Well, we would be doing something to give somebody else an experience that's outside of themselves. So is it storytelling, like with our voices when we put on a show, like we live action or whatever, or whatever that is, or just not even that. Maybe it's group discussions, and we want to create these discussions that help people to change, blah, blah, blah. We're using these skills that we've developed over time, but these are outside of the why. The why is the actual what's the point of filmmaking, And I know lots and lots of people that that just say, well, I just love, okay, so you want fame? Because that's going to fizzle out. As far as if you get it, you're going to lose yourself because you didn't find your true core self. And then, so there's a lot of things involved in that. And so, there was another guy that said, I want to get into video. And so I guess I'll start with wedding videos. And I was like, what's something that you just think about when you are relaxed, and then that gets you up, that say that you're like, you know what, I want to go do this thing just out of sheer enjoyment. And this guy said, fishing all the way. I love it so much. Okay, start with fishing videos. Do the thing first. Bring along some equipment so that you can share that passion with somebody else. Because you're obviously attracted to filmmaking, but again, that's just a tool. So what are you ultimately trying to do? So maybe you write some stories about that, or whatever. But marry the two things. And this is, of course, built on the foundation of a relationship with Christ, meaning that's where the true source of inspiration comes from. I feel like a lot of these ideas we've already created before, but we're just remembering them, maybe. That's just a theory, I don't know. But, and we get access to those, and we get dreams about them. We wake up at 4 a.m. and we write those things down, and then, okay, so then the other place that I wanted to get was what Barry was talking about with the finances, with our system today is set up to really push for productivity from the government to get people to produce, right? But not produce creative stuff necessarily, but to produce. So what happens is that you get these ruts, I don't know what a better word to call it, but these tracks that they have preset that have get involved in the sciences, and then you go and then you get your, take some college classes during high school so that you can get ahead so that you can go to college, and then from college and to get a 4-year degree, then you go on to get a master's or a PhD for the sake of having a master's and a PhD. So, right, so then you get in this, and then I've talked to so many people, they're not even using their master's, they're not even using their PhD. Now, I'm not putting those things down because I truly think some great people need to do that, and that's their path. But I think we need to be questioning those things first of like, why am I doing that? Why am I going down that path? Because then we get into the whole, what Barry was talking about. Well, then now I'm in this career path. I can't get out of it because I'm in student loan debt like crazy. So I have to stay in my career, this desk job, whatever it is that I'm miserable in. But I have to stay in it because I have to be able to pay those student loans. I have to be able to blah, 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 right? So you get stuck in this rut, and then all of your creativity goes out the window.
I have a perfect example of that. So I know a guy who's a budding entrepreneur, very, very entrepreneur. Just natural. He wants to do it. So he's started a couple businesses. And so he wanted to get more training and education and stuff like that. So I was telling him, trade school is great. They're small, like you can pay them off faster. And then once you're done paying them off, you could start doing what you really want to do. And it was basically just clientele based so here's the main question. If you're going into education, considering it, what's your intention? If you're an entrepreneur and you want to get into engineering,
like making a product, right? Like if you want to get in, is that where you're going?
If you want to end up working for a corporation with a consistent job, paying a consistent loan bill, then you have to intend on working at a job that will have a consistent paycheck doing that.
Right.
And you have to really, Some people really love teaching and they really want to go into it. So they get a PhD and they go into teaching. That is fantastic. That's where education will get you in that track. My story is I have a master's degree in creative writing. It doesn't work for me. So it gets down on me a lot because my intended path was not to work for a corporation and do just maybe some writing or something, or a big chain corporation of photography or something, and then I'm just working 40 hours a week doing that, trying to pay off my school loan. These are fields where if you don't want to go into teaching or a consistent job like that and have your life freed up, and then we are living in an age that is so different now with education. The traditional idea is the books are at school, so we need to go there, and the teachers have already been through this, and so they're going to teach us this. We have internet that is just, it's almost ridiculous that we have a building now that we go to where sometimes we have overflow and there's just a speaker there that people listen to, the teacher talking, or the material is just as new to the teacher as it is to the students, and the teacher just read it the day before and is now just telling us that. Whereas we have access to the same books and materials of people with PhDs giving us the same information online. Things have changed so much. So I believe as it is right now, it's going to be changing even more. Because we don't have to, the information is available, technology that we have right now is available. It's becoming within our grasp to do it. And I feel like this is inspired from the Lord because he really wants us to get independent. Mm-hmm. And the filmmaking world is just this story, basically. We have just film that is super expensive, and only the studios can really afford it to make big feature films. And you need these big jibs and equipment to make it really look good, and helicopters, and now we could fit it in a duffel bag, that all of this equipment that makes aerial shots and great sounding equipment, like you're the technician as we speak, we only need the two of us. It's like amazing how the technology is within our reach, information and everything.
Yeah. That's the bright thing that we talked about in our intro video, is that it may be difficult, may be hard, the world may seem dark and dismal to get out of, but here's the hope and here's the light. That there is so much information out there now. There is so much stuff that we can learn, that even while you're at your job, that might not be the thing that you don't, you don't feel yourself blooming there. You don't feel like, there's something else that you could be or want to be doing, and that you can start now, again, whatever that means. And this is why it goes back to the relationship with Christ, because we can't say what that looks like for you, but we do know that one thing that it will look like is just communicating with God and following Christ. That's it, because then he guides you to things. You could just be listening to a podcast like this one, the best one, or just simple things like that spark something, and then you start writing things down, and then you start, so you're still working at the place that you're at or whatever. You don't have to make this giant leap. Sometimes it is a giant leap, but you'll be prepared for that. So it's just that foundation first.
So you mentioned the fisherman, and you mentioned that the Lord will inspire you to. So when you say those words, and that you mentioned the guy who really liked fishing, how do I say this in a nutshell? We have in this perspective that God exists, that Jesus Christ is with us, that we have a purpose here on earth. We have talents that we have been gifted with. Some of those talents and gifts we only feel once in a while, and that draws us to it. And those we can call dreams, and we can call them passions or whatever they are. Those things are gifts to us that we are able to give. Some people misuse them. Some people are have buried them. A lot of people have, because we feel like we're at the 9 to 5, or we feel like we have to go to this job, and that dream we had is just a pipe dream now, and it's just something we fantasize about sometimes. But we're trying not to fantasize about, because we have to keep grounded. It's like, no, these are things. What we're saying is that guy who really likes fishing, there's something deeper going on there. That we are connected with. Perhaps he was like a fisherman, like Peter. Like we love fishing. Like there's something with fishing. We are fishers of men. We are hunters of men. Talking about proclaiming the gospel and finding souls, and so there's a principle there of what is. If you dig down it and realize those principles, and they're instilled within us in our connection with Jesus Christ and principles, then we have gifts and talents that are going to glorify him and bring us closer to him. Like if you're into science, cooking, baking, art, engineering, inventions, computers, filmmaking, whatever the topic is, therapist, being a therapist, sports, those things have a principle behind it. All of them do. Mm-hmm. You could draw principles and lessons and analogies on how it teaches you principles. And all of those things are instilled with you. We have talents. We have physical talents. We have mental talents. All of these things to connect with people emotionally. Those are gifts. So when we have these gifts, we could dig down. And a lot of times it's extremely simple to figure out what to do, because all you have to do is ask yourself that same thing that you ask the guy who loved fishing. Like, what is it what you do? Oh, easy, I would do this. There's your motivation. That will never end. It's a spring that will keep coming, and then you'll work hard your entire life to get there.
Because it will be a natural fruit, as opposed to, I need to work hard for the sake of working hard. Right. That will wear out. And so just like, I need to work hard at making wedding videos and get really good at it, and then I'm going to go do this other thing. It's like, well, why not just skip that wedding video part? Unless that's your passion, then do it.
Even working hard to get money, you will burn out.
Yeah. The other thing I want to say was, I lost it. Just a second. So the whole working hard, no.
So I've heard people say sometimes our motivation is just a little bit off. We think it's a part of our entrepreneur thing and our passion. Like, I want to, I need to think of an example, but it's like, I want to get into cooking, or because I love farming, it's just like a little bit off.
Yeah.
Or I want to make this because I've got to make money and people want it. And that will have an end because you don't have that motivation. Mm-hmm. One guy said, I wanted to get an education in accounting because it was challenging and I wanted to take on the challenge. And I automatically knew, I'm like, he's going to burn out. Like, because you could take on a challenge for the sake of the challenge.
Yeah.
But if it's not your thing, you will burn out and you'll lose interest. So you'll have to change to something else. You see that so many times in people in lifelong careers. Why do people have career changes? Why is people like, someone was a bus driver I was working with, and he was like, I'm working up for my entire retirement and I'm going to stay here. And just recently he switched his job to being a police officer. I'm like, why do people do that? Because they're as we can get the topic of, if I'm learning something, I could do any job, I think. Like if I'm learning and growing,
Mm-hmm.
I could do any job. I'm like, I really like this because I'm learning, I'm growing. And then there's my motivation is to learn, but I know it's going to have an end.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do the rest of my life. And then as soon as that has an end, I need to do something else, change or whatever it is. I can't be a bus driver for 40 or 50 years like there are bus drivers that long. Bless them. We need bus drivers, but I couldn't do that.
That brings a thought to mind is the whole. This is probably a whole podcast or one episode to talk about, but our conclusions that we draw. Okay, so this is where I think we can get off track. Is the conclusion that we draw from, oh, well, since I am this, so I love fishing, then therefore I draw a conclusion that I need to start up a YouTube channel about fishing. Actually, don't draw a conclusion. So let that be the thing that you start with, but let this be a journey of self-discovery. Because you need to first figure out the thing that would motivate you enough to keep going. But then after that, or during, being open to the fact that this is going to morph and develop and change if you're open to that and not marry yourself to this identity of you're a fisherman. So I think you are, but meaning you could lose your identity, and I've seen this happen before, your own identity as, if we find our identity with Christ, we'll never fail. If we find our identity with the thing, we will fail. So whatever that is. So again, it's we know somebody that just completely went off the rails because they were in a job and they wanted to become an actor so bad, and they but so bad that was part of their identity, and they ended up losing their family and disregarding everything else. So, and that new identity is now I am going to be this actor, and we've seen this so many times with friends of ours or people, acquaintances, that they have a belief in Christ and they try and try and try, and then something happens with them in our field, and they completely forget about Christ, and because they got famous, made a bunch of money or whatever, and so they're married to this new identity of fame and this or whatever. So I think that's what we keep coming back to, is our foundation needs to be right of why we're doing something. That's why it wouldn't necessarily require you to just give up your whole life, meaning your job or whatever at beginning. Again, I did leave. I was full-time. I had a full-time job at our church in Utah, and we got to the point, my wife and I, where we felt like a big move was happening, and I left employment. Now I still contract for the church, so there's nothing bitter there, but it was more, and that's actually ideal for me because so I made all these connections out there, so I still have those connections, but I did do a big leap, but it wasn't a leap of giving up everything of my beliefs in God and my family or whatever, but it was more of we were prepped for that, and then we've been on this new journey, and it's been amazing. It's been very difficult, but also I would never trade it for anything. I don't look back with regret or anything. And again, so that can sound contradictory. What I was saying is, but it's that foundation that's most important, because it is, things could change, and if your identity was with that thing, it's kind of this was what happens to parents when children leave the house, and if their identity was all soaked up in their children, and their children leave, and the parents never, the husband and wife never really developed their relationship because they were just so focused on their children. They actually have difficulties in their marriage when the children leave because their identity was their children. So this sneaks into all of us. Like, what is our identity kind of thing? And it can lead us off into a different path if we're not careful. So anyway, that's what I was trying to say from my initial point was, if you're interested in something, don't get so married with that idea that you were interested and then you make a conclusion. Oh, then therefore I am this, or this is going to happen. Maybe, Heavenly Father, inspired me to get prepared with all these things. Therefore, the end must be coming because he's telling me to do that. That's might be true, but what if something doesn't happen and then you get disappointed that the end didn't come because that was your own conclusion that you made? That's what I've done this before. This is why I'm saying like it was my own conclusion I came to when he was just inspiring me to do this thing. But I'm the one that made a conclusion because he was making me do that, or he was asking me to do that thing. But no, there was just, and I've seen you do this too, where you've talked about it. You're like, oh, but he was leading me down this path. It was actually not even this other thing that I thought it was. And I think we can all say that. But that's actually the thing to really hyper pay attention to in our lives. Like, what conclusions are we drawing rather than just following him? And it's difficult, but meaning realigning, reassessing that all the time and not drawing conclusions on why we're on this path rather than, not why, but more of drawing conclusions from what we're doing. Then, it's like, oh, we started a podcast. Oh, and then it's going to get big and famous. So, oh, this is why I'm on the path because we're on this. Well, no. But I did tell you to do this thing. I led you to do that. But you're drawing conclusions that are not right. So, anyway.
I have a perfect example of that, and I know we could probably end any time here, but if you wanted, or just keep going, who knows. But it was, you're talking about when disappointments come, when you feel inspired to do something, start something, a business, or you have an idea that you think is going to be revolutionary and it's not, or it fizzles out and nobody gets it, or something like this, and financial fears are screaming at you and you're just just trembling inside. So I don't consider myself a filmmaker where I have before, because I had to sever that from me, because that passion was eating away at me. And I had to reassess who I was and what I'm doing and my purpose.
I like that.
And when I did that, I was like, okay, I'm more grounded, I'm solid, but I still have my talents. And they'll never go away. They'll always return, and I could trust no matter what I do or decide to do and get interested in, those things will come back to me. And so I don't have to feel like I'm losing or I'm missing out or I'm on any opportunities. I trust the Lord. Whenever I'm interested in something, I just do that. But this is a major lesson. So perk up your ears, because before, when I could consider myself a filmmaker, I'm like, that's it. I've tried everything. I'm just moving to LA. And I'm like, I had enough money to put like a payment for a month for a rent in an apartment. And I just went, and I'm like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to finally just make this work. And I really felt like I should go, and I did. So I was there for, I think, 9 or 10 months, and it was financially a nightmare for me. And it was constantly just like this cloud over me. And I was like going to church, meeting people, my roommates, and I would hang out with them. And then I ended up being so financially strapped and in debt with credit cards and stuff. And I'm like, I can't believe I did that. I don't want to do that, but I did it. I don't want to go into debt. I found a part-time job I was underemployed the whole time. So I finally was like, I can't do this. So I had to leave, and I left back to live with my brother or something. It was so it as I was driving back to my brother's, I was just like, what was that about? What was that? I so we can get caught up in these moments for anything that we try. I have all these talents. I want to share with everybody, the whole world, and uplift people and bring them, happiness. And I have all the right intentions in the entire world. Why did this happen? And so this, it wasn't until later that it dawned on me when I kept in contact with the people that I met. I met the awesomest. I met one of my best friends in filmmaking, and I met other people, the connections and the people that are so good. I'm still in contact with. That is the Lord's perspective. That's who He's looking at. He moves you around, whatever idea or whatever purpose you think you have. He moves you around to meet people. When you're trying to stay close to the Lord, you're trying to do the best you can, and you go through these horrible disappointments. Think about the Lord's perspective. It's other children of His that you're connected with. When you connect with that, everything will make sense.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's actually answering a question that I've had for a while for me right now. So I'm glad that came up in your brain.
Inspiration in real time.
Yeah, no, I'm serious, because that was, and I think it's got to be almost all of us that go through this. So it's like, that is literally the reason, like his wealth, God's wealth is His children.
Yes.
So when we're seeking what? I'm seeking wealth or whatever, the career in order to be secure. All of that is meaningless. Of course, it's a worthy cause to want to provide for your family.
How many people in history were broke who had a very profound part in influencing people?
Yeah, it's most, if not all. But I mean, it was just look at the example of Jesus Christ being born in a manger.
Exactly.
But he was able to be the people that he would listen to him. He had to be in that realm for them to listen to him. If he was brought up as a king, in the world's view of a king, then he's not. He's dealing with people that wouldn't have listened to him anyway. And so, he's got to be with the people that were prepped to follow him, his disciples.
Everything's spiritual. Everything is. When we walk with Jesus Christ, as disappointing as this world is, when we have that perspective, everything's spiritual. And if we do feel inspired, like you're feeling inspired that He's inspired me to do, He will provide a way, either supernaturally or some miraculous way that only you see, that you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just bought a house for $5,000 with cash. That's what it means. That's what it means to me, where I didn't have this money to get a loan, to get whatever, but within my means of trying, He provided it. And He does it all the time, like within little miracles of like, well, I don't know how I'm going to get that, because I feel like that's a key for me to continue with my resources, projects and stuff. And I'm like, but things happen all the time, and it helps. Sometimes we have to stretch our faith in asking, and to really trust that He can do it.
Yeah, there's also that. So that brings to mind too, because sometimes we're seeking. A lot of times, actually, we're all seeking some kind of miracle in our lives, and sometimes the Lord says no, and sometimes the Lord says yes. But we'll actually never be disappointed if we are seeking the right way. And what that means is, and this is, a shout out to Scott, who has been on our podcast before, but he said, that simple prayer of, Lord, I will do thy will. Just let me know what thy will is. I probably slaughtered it, but
Something like that.
it's something like that, where it's your perspective is, it could sound like you're a person of inaction, you're just waiting on the Lord, but it's more of the approach of where I still act on things that I don't know are going to be fruitful or not. But it's the perspective of, I stop drawing conclusions from those things that I'm working on. So, if this is working, well, then certainly it's going to be successful, or certainly this, whatever. Stop saying the certainly, because there are, and you've said it before, and now you've said it this time, but there was, you were blessed with a desire to do this certain thing, whatever it was, and then along the way you realized that, it was so that I could interact with that person, or it's so that this other thing that I was expecting. So what are we drawing conclusions for? It's I think that's the answer to how I approach the Lord is, help. Maybe if I don't know, and that's usually the thing that's happening, is that we don't know what's happening in our lives right now. So maybe it's help me to gain that perspective and see what thy hand, and help me to see your hand in my life, and to gain the right perspective of it, so that I can navigate it, I can continue with it, because that's what's motivating me the most. Like, if it's just financial, it's not motivating enough. If it's just, nothing else is motivating, unless it's when I know that I'm doing exactly what I should be doing. Like when I get those confirmations, then that makes me the most happy.
Yep. We've talked a little bit about, at least hearing his voice makes me happy. No matter if it's like something that I wasn't really asking for, but I heard his voice. I'm like, okay, there is purpose. You were explaining timing. Like when you get a yes or a no, or a maybe or a not yet, or something kind of response. And I'll give you an answer that the Lord would give. Does he want to give you everything, every righteous thing that you desire? And he does. Absolutely, yes, he does. Every righteous thing. There's just a timing that he will say, no, not yet, maybe later. Timing. So the answer is yes. It's just timing. So when we hear the Lord's voice, we can actually ask the question of, it doesn't feel like, I know he can do it and he's not. So why? Why isn't he? And then pay attention to your close relationships. Pay attention to the people that call you that day or the next day, or then you'll have this calming conversation like we're having right now. It's like, I didn't realize that before. There's a connection. There's a reason for it. There's like little pieces. And then later, when you have a little bit of hindsight, you'll start to see the pattern, that there is absolute timing. And there are a few moments in my life where I'm like, I could see exactly why the timing wasn't right for that blessing at that time.
And I'm grateful that it didn't happen.
Exactly. So we could trust him.
That's happened several times in my life where I said that. And I'm like, I'm so glad that I did not get that answer the way that I wanted. So, yeah, that perspective. So maybe, we can end it here, but my question is, how do we keep getting that perspective? Maybe it's something, because I lose it almost on a daily basis.
Daily hourly.
Yeah.
So thank you for bringing that up, because just within the last week, I've been calling my friend Benji. We'll have him on eventually. Very inspiring guy to listen to. But I think we may have missed a couple days, but we have been talking every day. And because there was a mixture of like every time we talk, we get a reminder, a perspective, an encouragement of like, this is what I've been watching. I've been watching Lord of the Rings lately, and we've been pulling off some principles from that. We talk about it, and we feel it. It's like, oh yeah, I've been watching that too. And those are the encouraging things. And then there's the perspectives that we've always known, and we repeat it to each other at various times. Like I can see the picture. This has been every day. And then for like 2 days ago, I went through another like questioning.
Yeah. No, I'm the same.
It's like every day.
In it up until 5 minutes ago. It's just kind of like,
It's amazing how much. This is why it's so therapeutic to have people to talk to and relate to, and it's therapeutic for me to talk about this even on this podcast, because you know that people are gonna. It gives good points of like talking points, but it's so nice to just have people to talk to and like back and forth and to gain that perspective. So
yeah. Send us your comments, even though we have 5 viewers right now, which I don't care about.
5? I didn't know.
I don't know. Do we? I haven't looked at all. But we would get a notification if you commented. But I think, but this whole thing, again, we are doing this in action, meaning we are doing something that we feel like we should do, and it's turning out to something. Card full. Oh, that's all right. It's still recording there.
Okay.
So we're still doing the thing that we feel like we should be, but we're not drawing any conclusions, meaning, oh, if then this, then this. It's more of, this is the effect that it's having on our lives. We're able to get through life better because we're having these conversations. We're just choosing to record them. That's it. So it's motivating to me, and sometimes I'm, overwhelmed by life, or something happens and I can't record or something, but it's like I come away from the show energized and not drained. And that's that. I shouldn't even call it a show, our conversation. And I come away with it energized. And so obviously it had a good fruit. And so then we just keep going with that. So even if we get, 50 episodes in, and it was just a few friends of ours that listened to it, and it just helped us, that was the point of it. As opposed to drawing a conclusion, oh, this is going to be a cool show, that blah, 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 or whatever. It's like I don't have I used to put all my hope into that with other things that I've worked on.
Oh, I could see where the Lord's taken this. Okay, I got it.
Oh, then I'm good. I'm happy. But then if it won't work out, or it doesn't work out, then guess what? You're disappointed, and it all shuts off. And so, and we've been through this with YouTube channels that we've started, shows that we've tried to do. That anyway, point is, it's think about that in your life. What things are is the Lord telling you? And what things are you asking the Lord, and how can you then, how can you get into the right place to continue following Him? And I think our conclusion has been to have conversations, connect with other people, and answers come. Now, obviously, if you're talking to a toxic person and you come away drained from that conversation, and it's like poison has entered your body and you're super negative and stuff like that, that's not the right person to talk to. So doesn't mean you shut them off maybe, but it's more of they should maybe see the light that you have so that it will influence them, but not necessarily get advice from them, if that makes sense. So point is, I'm talking too long now. talk to people just like this. It's helped me today, literally today, to get out of something that keeps coming up in my mind and to want to continue on with doing what I'm doing. Anyway. End.